So thank you, everybody. Really excited to be here. And as we get started, if your inquiries, your school interest is trending like this down arrow, then this is the sign you've been looking for. And that sign is inbound marketing. So let's jump in. So I have three themes really for the talk this afternoon. And the first is that first one I call the Apple effect, which you might not be aware, but Apple has really never been first to market with anything. They always see what else is out there. They let people figure it out. Then they iterate, make it better, make it their own. And that's my hope for you today. My hope is that you take what we talk about. I hope that you copy it, iterate it, make it your own, and then deploy it at your schools. The second is that a lot of stuff we talk about today, so inbound marketing and marketing automation and marketing technology, is like a foreign language. And the way I like to learn foreign languages is to understand the vocabulary, and then you can piece everything together and make sense of it. So I encourage you to do that as we talk today. And then finally, like my buddy here, I give you permission to be overwhelmed. We're going to go through a lot of stuff. There's going to be a lot in here, some concepts or ideas that you haven't used before, some that you might be very familiar with. But just know that it's okay to be overwhelmed. At the end of the presentation, I will give you an opportunity to download my slides and then everything that we talk about in this slide deck. So take notes if you'd like, but just know that you'll get everything that's in here. As far as questions, I'm happy to take them as we go along. So I'll be looking at the Zoom bar here, but we'll also have time at the end. So why does this matter? And why should you be considering inbound marketing? So I think three reasons I have. So the first is that you're probably familiar with these brands. These are big national brands, international brands, and they are marketing to our prospective families in a way that they're training our prospective families to expect certain things, and they're really raising the bar. The problem is that our schools, by and large, are not marketing to our prospective families in the same way that they've become accustomed to. So there's a disconnect. So I think that's hugely problematic, and I think that kind of gap is getting bigger and bigger. So I really encourage schools to step up their game. The second is this. I think a lot of school marketers operate this way. And I don't mean this as, being insensitive to school marketers, because a lot of times I would be this way too. But, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is a mantra of a lot of school marketers. So here's what I would say. If your school is full, you have students, you're not in a problem space in terms of enrollment, then I still think it's worth you starting to implement inbound marketing, because there are dips. Things go up and down, right? Could be economic, could be global events. They're going to affect our parents, and it could affect our schools. And the thing about inbound marketing is that it absolutely works, but it's not a magic bullet, or, you can't flip the magic light switch and then things will happen. It takes time. So if you're in a good position, I encourage you to start to implement this, because then if you're ever in a bad position, you already have it in place. If you're not in a great position and you need more students, you need to start to try different things. So if you don't try inbound marketing, you've got to experiment, and you have to start to implement new things at your school to try to get new students. Because throwing money at this, so if there's a problem and you throw money at the problem with the same solutions, most likely you're just going to fail bigger. Finally, not sure if you've seen this, but this is the NAIS research. It's the State of the Independent Schools. 2021 is the most current edition. So NAIS is National Association of Independent Schools. Again, I put a lot of text on the slides so that you can read this, but I just want to highlight, this is talking about digital marketing campaigns. And if you look at the bar graph, it's saying that 9% of the respondents don't know how effective their digital marketing campaign performance was. Hugely problematic for me. Like, these digital marketing techniques and strategies are measurable. It's not perfect. So I don't want you to think you're going to know exactly, like, the holy grail of taking an enrolled student and drawing back a line to one initiative is still really hard. Although with digital, you can get a better idea. So the fact that 9% don't know is just, I don't even understand that. 39% say very effective. That's great. 50% say somewhat effective. Again, they're either not, they don't understand, they're not implementing properly. So that's a problem. 3% saying it's not very effective, which means they're just, again, they don't understand in a bigger way and they don't know. So again, all these things lead up to why I think you should consider inbound. I'd next like to share my story a little bit on how I got into inbound and how I got here today. So it really started in 2008 and 9. And I don't know if you remember this. This is the US stock market. If you, sorry about that. If you look at the bottom, you'll see, 1999, 2000, 2002, all the way up to 2007. The last vertical bar would be 2008. And it's the crash of 8-9. And unfortunately for me, that was when I started at my former school, which was Sewickley Academy. It was a pre-K through 12 day school located outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I still live, about 12 miles northwest of the city. I had just started, we just moved to Pittsburgh, and then this happened. And I remember sitting around a table with my head of school, who I had really just met for all intents and purposes. And everybody freaked out because our interest indicators, our inquiries, our applications, and our visit were about a 1 month trailing average of that dip. So we panicked. And what did we come up with? We came up with this campaign, Start Here, Go Anywhere. Wasn't particularly effective, I can tell you. But the idea was so that we weren't, that definition of insanity. We were going to try outbound traditional marketing methods that we had never done before. So things like, and I don't know if this is prevalent in the UK or not, but it is in the US, in certain markets. We put up billboards. So I mentioned we're in Pittsburgh, we're by the airport. We put up placards in the Pittsburgh International Airport. We did hyper targeted direct mail to families to gain interest. And the problem is that these are super, super expensive. It's, I would say, impossible to measure. Like it's really hard to measure the effectiveness of it. And most importantly, all this money and all this time and this effort did not change our interest indicators. So our inquiries, our applications, and our visits. So what were we going to do next? So this is the time of social media was just blowing up. So we thought this is a picture of my school, former school. I'm not there anymore. And we thought, okay, if we launch our Facebook page and our Twitter account, we'll have hundreds of mission appropriate full pay families beating down our doors, waiting to come and enroll at our school. The problem is we ended up like this pub. I got some phone numbers, got some likes, got a couple of emails, but it didn't change our interest indicators. So our inquiries, our applications, and our visits didn't go up. So learn from my mistake. Social media by itself will not solve your enrollment challenges. Now, I would argue social media as part of an inbound marketing strategy or methodology, which we'll talk about, will absolutely help, but not by itself. So here's what we came up with. Actually, I wish I came up with Google, but I didn't. But here's what we came up with is that families search for school starts here. And we'll talk about why it's so important. Now, I know we were talking about this just a little bit before in the previous presentation, but you might be saying, Brendan, what about word of mouth? Which I affectionately call the cocktail conversations, or I don't know how it is in the UK with schools, but that when parents drop off kids in the morning and then they sit around, I call it the parking lot mafia. So parents are sitting there chatting and you're just like, you want to be a fly in the wall thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? Now, that word of mouth is still incredibly important. However, I would argue that once those conversations are complete, a family would then go to Google and they're going to go online and they're going to search. So do you show up? What kind of content do you have up there? What kind of reviews are up there? What's your digital presence? What can they learn about you to either corroborate what someone has said about you, in that word of mouth, or to change what someone said positive, or if it's negative, you want to make it positive about you. So something to think about. If you take nothing from today, read this book. I don't get anything from it, but it was super important in my journey. It's the Inbound Marketing book. This is the second edition by Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah. So Halligan and Shah, the founders of HubSpot. So a couple things here. One, you do not need to use HubSpot software. And if you're familiar with HubSpot software, it's software that allows you to do inbound marketing. You don't need to use their software to do inbound marketing. Now, I'm a huge fan. It makes it easier, but you don't need to use it. Secondly, this book, you don't have to have the software to use it. It talks about the strategies and the techniques. But this book will lay it out for you. It'll go into more detail from what we talk about today. It's an easy read. But one thing that I recommend is that when I got the book, remember I talked about freaking out, sitting around the table. We put up the billboards. We were doing social media. I picked up this book. I read this book, and this is super cheesy, but like the light bulb went off for me. I'm like, this is what we need to do. So I read the book, and then what I did, and this is what I encourage you to do, is buy a couple more copies and give one to your head of school or your chief decision maker, and maybe a couple to your team. And I gave it to my head of school because I wanted him to go through it and understand what we were trying to do, which made the whole process later on down the road a lot easier when he had a sense. Now, he's super intelligent, reads a lot. He didn't read the whole book. I know he didn't read the whole book, but he read enough of it to understand, which gave us a chance to have dialogue and meaning. And it was really important, I think, in the success of our initiative going forward. So what is inbound marketing? So inbound marketing is using marketing to bring potential customers to you rather than having your marketing efforts fight for their attention. So let me unpack that a little bit. So I'll start with what the opposite of inbound marketing. So outbound marketing, traditional marketing is a term I used, interruption marketing. So the idea is this, is that those interruption marketing, traditional marketing ideas, interrupt your consumption pleasure. So a newspaper ad would interrupt your reading in the newspaper. A radio ad would interrupt your listening on the radio. A television ad would interrupt your viewing, on and on. Now, there are a couple of things that are wrong with those techniques now. One, their technologies would take that away. Satellite radio, DVR, so the ads are gone. Two, people don't consume the way they used to. So I just mentioned, like, you could be on streaming services, or you're reading things online, or you're getting summaries delivered to your email. So, a lot of these techniques have gone away. They're a lot less effective. And as a result, I think they've become even more expensive. So the idea is, rather than interrupting or going out, HubSpot, who coined the term, initially in their kind of literature and explanation of the whole thing, they use a magnet. So the whole idea is that you would draw people to you. And how do you do that? You really do it through search engines, through Google. Now, when I talk about search engines, it could be Bing or DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine. It's just that Google happens to have the biggest market share. So I'll just refer to Google. But the idea is that when someone types in a keyword in Google, you need to be found. You need to show up. And whether that's, we're going to talk about this, but search engine optimization or content or blog posts, you need to get found that way. So let me take a little diversion, then I'll bring it back. And I just want to share, this is the traditional enrollment funnel. I'm sure you've seen stuff similar to this in the past. I think that this is dead, and I don't like thinking about this traditional funnel anymore. And I don't like it for two reasons. The first is that it signifies an end. So the problem with this funnel is that prospects, inquiries, applicants, admits, but then there's an end there, enrolled. And if you're doing the work of an enrollment manager in any form, you know that re-enrollment is an incredibly important part of this whole process. And this funnel doesn't talk about re-enrollment at all. I used to walk around my office. I'm a former admission director, and I would say, it's a lot easier to re-enroll a student than enroll a student. And again, this is not represented on this in this funnel. The second thing is the ghost. The term ghost inquiry. I didn't make it up. I think it's great though. And you might stealth inquiry, stealth applicant, a couple other terms I used or have heard. But the idea is this: is that the first time that you hear from a family is when they apply to you. It's a ghost applicant. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And while that is great, the thing that scares me about that is really two things. One, What about all those families that researched your school, kicked the tires, so to speak, and then never inquired or applied, and you lost them? And you lost them and you never had a chance to talk to them. So how many did you lose? So that scares me. The second thing is these people applied. Again, it's great, but they did their research without you having a voice in the conversation. So you weren't able to talk to those families and share with them what is important about your school, what makes your school different from your main competitor. Why do people choose to continue to go to your school or re-enroll in your school again and again and again? So that's, again, the ghost inquiry. So what I like to think about and came up with is this idea of an enrollment ring, or the enrollment ring, so to speak. And the idea is that you work your way from outside inside. So first, a family has to become aware that your school exists. And then you want them interested. And the interest is the inquiry. Then you want them to apply. You want them to enroll. You want them to re-enroll. And then you want them to become alumni and then evangelist. And you'll see there's a black bar as an evangelist. A person can become an evangelist of your school at any time in the process. So here's an example, a real life example that we had. We had a family, this was obviously a number of years ago, who was in lower school. They lived in Pittsburgh, and mom got a huge job. I think it was like San Diego, so in California. They moved because mom was moving, and they left. They were huge fans of our school. They were going to re-enroll in the school, but again, they stayed together as a family and they moved to San Diego. That family was an evangelist of our school. So this goes back to good word of mouth. What was so great is that there was a family that our family had gotten to know in San Diego. That family moved to Pittsburgh. And because the family that we had said such great things about the school, they had inquired at our school and they ended up enrolling at our school. So you can be an evangelist at any time in this process. But the big question to move forward is how are we going to attract families to us? And the answer is inbound marketing. So let's jump in. So high level, there are 5 steps to inbound marketing: personas, keywords, SEO, which is search engine optimization, content, and social media. So what we're going to do in terms of the remainder of our time with this talk is we're going to go through what all these 5 things are. And then I'm going to go through it again and talk about how you can start to do this yourself. So let's jump in. So personas, if you're not using personas in your school marketing, besides reading the inbound marketing book, this would be the second thing I would do. Start to do personas. Even if you don't do inbound marketing, start to create personas and use them in your marketing, because they really answer the question of who are you trying to attract. So this is who you're trying to attract, and personas help. Personas are a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. So I'm sorry if you can hear the construction. It's usually quiet at my house. And of course, today would be the day, so I apologize. So this was an example that we had for our personas. And this was one we used, Ann Ramsey. So she was a first generation independent school family, meaning so the schooling in the US, we have independent schools, private schools, and then public schools. Public schools are free. Private schools, of course, you have to pay tuition. So Anne and her husband did not go to private schools, so they went to the public schools. So that's what I say by first generation. 2 parents are working. Anne and her partner, her husband, both work because we need them to generate income to pay for our tuitions. Additionally, Anne, we picked the mom, a female, on purpose, because we feel that moms are, at least for our school, we're still making the decisions about education for their children. It was a lower school age child, so it was someone looking for, early years or primary. And then we're trying to decide their pain points or figure out their pain points. So before care and after care. So because Anne and her husband worked, they would need to drop the child off early because they needed to get to work before their work started, before school started. Additionally, afterwards, school for us was done around 3:15, and the parents couldn't get to school till about 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. So they needed that aftercare. Transportation, same issue. As the child got older, how do you get the child to and from school and then from school home? And then looking for partnerships. So Anne and her husband, obviously, as they're looking for this option for schooling, are educated and value education. Although we think there's a little just in our research, that there was a little guilt because Anne and her husband couldn't be more involved in the schooling process. They can't volunteer during the day. They couldn't be there because they were both working. So they're looking for communication. They're looking for partnership in raising their child. They're looking for that trusted community or advisor to help. So again, another pain point, something that we're trying to solve. So that's a persona. The second thing are keywords. So keywords are, so when I talk about a keyword or keywords, it isn't necessarily one word, it's a phrase. So we'll talk about a phrase here in a second, but so like Pittsburgh private schools, that was a keyword that we were trying to rank for. And the idea is this: what would Anne type into Google, and then we would expect our school to show up on the first page of Google? Well, now, if you know, Google's gotten rid of pages, it's just continuous scroll. However, we're still talking about that first page, arguably in the first 3 slots, 1, 2, 3. So I'm not talking about paid. So they put the paid ads first. I'm talking about that organic results, 1, 2, 3. I throw this out here as a warning. Chip and Dan Heath, I love to read. Here's another book. It's an oldie but a goodie, made to stick. So I share this quote: the person sharing the idea has all sorts of insider information that others don't. So they've already framed the problem and understand its relevance. So we suffer from the curse of knowledge. So everybody on this call and me suffer from the curse of knowledge. And the idea is that because we're involved in our schools, we know the vernacular, we know the words. At least in the US, here's how I would explain this. The school I used to work at was an independent school, National Association of Independent Schools. However, Anne, being a first-generation independent school family, if she searched, she would say private school. And those words are interchangeable in the US. So understanding what words people use makes a difference, because the search Pittsburgh private school is different from the search Pittsburgh independent school. So as you think about creating keyword lists, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, I encourage you to create 3 lists of words. And what I do is, I still do this to this day, I put independent, private, and targeting. And the idea is this: independent is for people that suffer from the curse of knowledge, people that know the vernacular, they know the words, they understand it. The second list is private. So people that don't know the words, they're not sure, they wouldn't use the same word that you use. So thinking about that. And then the third is targeting. Is your school single gender? Is it all girls, all boys? Does your school have a great robotics program? Does it have a great hockey program? Does it have a great football program? And you want to attract kids for that. That would be targeting. We'll talk more about that a little later on. So now that we have those keywords, we need to think about search engine optimization. So I'm hugely bullish on search engine optimization, and I want schools to do this more and more. And we'll talk about that why in a sec. So search engine optimization. So let me go back. Really, so search engine optimization is the ability to move up the rankings in Google. So let's say that, and when I started at my school, I would type in Pittsburgh private schools, and Sewickley Academy, which was the school I was working at, didn't show up on the first page. It actually didn't show up on the second page. It didn't show up on the third page. So I stopped looking. I just started crying, and I thought, oh my gosh, I was devastated. But search engine optimization is taking your results for that search term, Pittsburgh private schools, and moving up the rankings. And I'm arbitrarily picking a number, let's say from 51 up to 3. So that's what SEO is. So let's talk about why SEO is important. 51% of all website traffic is driven by organic search. So organic search is that free stuff in Google. It's not the paid. It's the most powerful channel on the internet for driving traffic, brand awareness, and prospective families to your website. Here's the scary part, the last bullet. Most schools don't have a strategy for organic search traffic, yet it's driving most of the traffic to your website. So let me back this up a little more with data. So 2019, 2020, this is actual results from my former school, Sewickley Academy. So pretty close. 46% of users came from organic search. 29% was direct, 9% display is paid, 5% is paid search, those are Google ads, pay-per-click ads, and then 2% social, so from social media. More data. So this is the same 2019, 2020. Organic search, same as on the left, and then the top. Bounce rate. It's traffic that comes to a page and then bounces away, it leaves, which suggests bad quality or bad search. For bounce rate, you want the lowest. Pages per session is what it sounds. The number of pages a person views per session. Highest is the best. Average session duration. It's the number of, in minutes, so minutes and seconds, the time someone stays on a site. Highest is the best. So look at organic search. It's free, remember. 68% bounce rate, second lowest, pretty good. 1.9% pages per session, second highest, really good. Average session duration, 1.31, it's the highest. Great. Let's look down a little bit here. So people talk about the importance of Google pay-per-click ads. They are important, but I want to give you context and a frame of reference. Look at paid search. 60% bounce rate, lowest, it's the best. Pages per session, 2.26, that's the highest. That's great. Average session duration is the second highest, 1.19. So paid search is really good. However, let's go back here. It only accounted for 5% of the traffic to the website. So just to give you context. Finally, I want to talk about social real fast. And people talk about social media all the time and how important it is. And it is important. We're going to talk a little bit about it. But people focus so much time on social media. And I'm like, but so much more of your traffic's coming from organic, which could be affected by SEO. Yet most schools do nothing for it, which drives me crazy. So look at social, bounce rate, kind of in the middle. Pages per session, pretty good. Session duration, second lowest. And then look at this, 2% of traffic. Now, again, this is traffic to the website, which would be a recruitment tool as opposed to retention. We'll talk about that in a second, but just to give you context of where everything is. So search engine is affected by two things. Again, this is high level, but just to give you, something to think about. It's affected by relevance and authority. So relevance is, let me explain it this way. So if somebody typed into Google, Pittsburgh private investigator, and my former school, Sewickley Academy, showed up, let's see here. It is Pittsburgh, because we're in Pittsburgh. It is private, but we're not investigators. So what's going to happen is, let's say that my school's results showed up on top of that, number one slot. Google would see that nobody's clicking on that link because it's not a good result. It's not a relevant term. And then they would slowly start to drop us in the rankings. Now, conversely, if they typed in Pittsburgh private schools and Sewickley Academy showed up, people would be clicking on that, I would have hoped, which then Google would, through its algorithm, see that's a good result. That is a relevant result. So it would then go up in the rankings. So that's relevance. Let's talk about authority. So authority is simply defined, again, this is generalization, as the number of inbound links a website has. So let's say that my blog, SchneiderB.com, links to Alicia's website. That would be an inbound link for Alicia's website, and Google views that as a thumb up. It's basically me saying, hey, look, it's like kind of an online word of mouth. This is worthy of an inbound link, so you should see that. Now, again, as Google, it's always more complicated, but one of the things that matters is the weight of the link. So, for example, my blog, SchneiderB.com, versus the New York Times. The New York Times obviously is a much more important website. It carries a lot more weight. So if Alicia's blog got a link from the New York Times, that would be much more important in terms of SEO than a link from my blog. So just to give you an idea. So apologies to Robert Frost, two paths to get and to do SEO. We'll talk a little bit more about it in detail. But the first one is on page. So there are technical things that you can do to your website now, to do to your web pages now, and it will affect your search engine optimization. If you're not technical, that's okay, because most of the content management systems for our school websites now, so if you're using one of the school systems or you're using WordPress or even Squarespace or something else, they make it very easy so that you can do the things that you need to do to affect SEO in a positive way without you looking at code like this. So don't be intimidated by it. Second path is really off-page SEO, which flows into number 4, which is content. So this slide reminds me that content can take many forms. So it can be video, it can be audio, it can be images, or for schools, most likely it's going to be the written word, which means it's going to be a blog. And I encourage schools to, launch a blog on their site. Now, I'm going to talk about, as I go through it again, specifically what a blog is versus what it isn't, because I think most schools get that confused. The final step is social media, and let me talk how social media can positively affect enrollment within the confines of an inbound marketing methodology. So again, another huge fan of reading. This is Epic Content Marketing. Joe just released version 2 of the book, but let me go through here. This quote: in social media marketing, the center of gravity, the focus of the marketing activity, is located within the social networks themselves. In contrast, the center of gravity for content inbound marketing is a brand website. So let me unpack that. The way, and I'll do it visually. I'm a visual learner. So there are two ways to think about social media, in my opinion. One is recruitment, one is retention. The first way that schools really don't do very well is recruitment. And the idea of this, and I use this Ferris wheel as an idea. So the inside of that Ferris wheel, that little blue circle, that's the hub of your marketing efforts. That's your website and or your school blog if they're together. And the idea is that the social media channels are those gondolas or those cars. And then what they do is you're driving traffic into the school website. So let me talk about that. So the idea is if you're on Facebook and you post content, it's really hard to convert that person. And when I say convert, from an anonymous prospective family into something as simple as an email address. It's really hard to do that on social media. However, you can post something on social media. You want to take them away from social media, drive them to your website where it's much easier, still hard, but it's much easier to convert them into a prospective family that you know. Conversely, if you post for retention, it's like this: I love the fall, I love the leaves. Like this reminds me, I just want to go sit on the bench and stay there and enjoy the scenery and the wildlife. So the idea is that I post something on Facebook, or let's say Instagram. I post something on Instagram, and it's something that's happening at school. Now that is designed to retain the families that we have and give families the reason or reasons why they've enrolled their children in our school and why they should continue to enroll their children in our school. It reinforces their decision. Gold star.
This guy is Brendan Schneider, who I have heard of before. He's an American, renowned expert in the field of schools marketing. I'm telling you,
I don't know. Hi, Alicia. Am I okay? Yeah. So, thank you. So anyways, the idea is that if you post on social media, post on Facebook, you're just trying to keep them there. You're not trying to move them off to, your website or your blog to convert them. So let me pause for a sec. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. If there are any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. And if not, we'll move on. And I know it's Friday, end of the day, so I'll be mindful of time, and I'm between you and whatever you're doing for the weekend. So I want to be respectful of that. So thinking about personas. So again, at the end of the presentation, I'll tell you how you can get all this. Here's a worksheet I created to help you create your personas. So learn from our mistakes. When we first did the persona work, we had a big team. We gathered way too much data, spent way too much time, and figured out things. And here's the key: that weren't actionable for us as school marketers. So, hi, Penny. I see your question. I'll get there in 1 second. Thank you. So what we did was, and here's the example of unactionable data. We did this big study and survey, and it came back to us that our parents would read Town and Country magazine. And for us, I thought, okay, but how is that actionable to us? We're not going to advertise in Town and Country magazine. So what does that mean to us? It meant nothing. So what I encourage you to do is don't do this work by yourself. Do it with at least one other person on your team, probably maybe 3, maybe 4, but don't get it too big. You can use this worksheet as a start. And then what you do is you just start to write down who you're trying to attract. So I would start with the children and the ages in the divisions. Are they in the early program, primary, secondary? Like, where does your school need children the most? And then think about the parent of that child, because I assume you're trying to attract the parents and not the children. And then think of age, gender relationship. Remember, the example I shared was a mom. She's making the decisions. And it's important for us to focus on the woman. What was her age? Is she married? Is she not? Does she have a partner? What's all that situation like? The ones where it says Google Analytics, I'll come back to. Again, the ages, divisions of the children. How do you reach them? So this is the actionable piece. What social media channels are they on? Do they read local newspapers? How do they consume their news? How to find them online is really what you're trying to do. Where do they live? So for example, for us, we knew that Anne lived north of school. So we knew they lived in the north suburbs of where we were, and we could target them based on zip code. Pardon me. So that was important to find out where they lived. And then to start to think about their pain points and their problems. And what you want to do, remember we talked about before care, after care, transportation. How do you identify those pain points and problems? More importantly, how does your school help answer those for the persona? And then think about the objections. Why would they not choose to send their child to your school? And then how do you combat those objections? You need to have answers for those. Going back up to the Google Analytics piece. So this would be for GA3, Google Analytics 3. I know we're going, or Universal Analytics. We're not, Google Analytics 4 is coming this summer. Well, it's here, but switching over full time in the summer. If you go to GA3, go to audience demographics, it'll give you some demographic data of people that have visited your website. Additionally, if you go to interests and then go to audience interests, it'll give you interests of those people. Again, it's not like the holy grail to figure everything out, but it's a data point. And then what you can do is get an idea of this person who you're trying to attract. What I would then recommend that you do is once you have that idea, you'll probably think of 1 or 2 or 3 people in your school, already in your school, who fit that profile. I would then go have coffee with that person, have a meeting with that person, and think about, don't tell them. I mean, if you have a good relationship with them and you want to talk to them about that, but go have a conversation with them about how they chose your school and ask them, how did you first learn about the school? What were you looking for? What did you like? What did you not like? What's your experience been? Ask them what were the pain points and problems? What were your initial objections? Just to try to triangulate to make sure that what you're thinking resonates with the people that are currently at your school. So Penny asks, roughly how many persona profiles would you suggest? Penny, wonderful question. Start with 1. So what I encourage you to do is start with 1, work the whole process through, and then go back. You're going to have more than 1, most likely, unless you're a very specific type of school. So for us at my former school, we had an early childhood, a lower school, a middle school, and then an upper school or a high school. So we ended up having 4 personas, but we didn't start out with 4. It took us time to go through it. So don't panic and think you have to do those all now. Just think of 1, get it done, see how it's going. And then once you kind of nail that, then you can move to the other ones. I hope that helps, Penny. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Happy to go through it. So once you have the persona, what you need to do is create your keyword list. So again, at the end, I'll tell you how you can get this, just a Google Sheet, or you can just do this. So independent is on 1 column, private is the second column, member suffering not suffering from the curse of knowledge. And then 3 is targeting. So what I would do in terms of, that's great. Thanks, Penny. So what I would do is recommend that you just get 3 to 5 keywords to start. Don't overthink this or overdo this, but think of 3 to 5 for each column. So you're going to end up with 9 or 15. 9 to 15, and just think about what would Anne, we called her Anne, our thing, what would Anne type into Google, and you would expect your school to show up. And those are the keywords list that you want to do. So it's really, we'll talk about what to do with them, but it's really pretty that simple. Go on a little tangent here, and then we'll come back. This is something called an inquiry magnet. And I encourage you to think about this, particularly as you're thinking about keywords and thinking about your persona. So here's the idea. What would, and again, I'm thinking of Anne, what would Anne, what's a piece of content that Anne would theoretically pay for, but you're not going to have her pay for it. You're going to give it to her for free. Well, actually not free. You're going to give it to her in exchange for her email address. And the idea is that as you go back to this document, think of those pain points and problems, or possibly even objections. What is a piece of content that you can create that's going to, maybe solve those or answer those pain points or problems or answer those questions or objections? And this is a school that I helped do this. You can actually go look at blog Hudson Montessori School. It's a Montessori school in Hudson, Ohio, where my wife and I used to live. And this was the guide, a critical decision, a guide to help parents select their child's first school. So obviously we're going for those early years children, the young children, because that's where they want to bring them in a Montessori school. And this was what we decided. Now, here's what's great. This, hopefully you're thinking this looks pretty valuable. Like, this is a great image. This is what you get. This is not what it was. What we did is we created a PDF. We used Canva. It looked good. It was branded for the school, but we didn't spend any money on it. Well, there's a little asterisk. I'll show you in a sec. The idea is that it wasn't about the layout and everything. Like, it looked nice, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't about that. It was about the content being super valuable. And ultimately, this guide was designed so that if Anne in Hudson, Ohio downloaded this, or someone in Pittsburgh, or someone in the UK downloaded this, it would be helpful for them. They would be able to go through this guide and help select their child's first school. So the idea is that it's not necessarily about your school. It's just a general helpful piece of content. Now, here's what we did in some of the questions that we ask there, and in some of the explanations. It was a soft sell for Hudson Montessori School. We teed it up a little bit to highlight our benefits, but it's really just not about the school. Now, here's a tip here. I don't know if you guys have seen Fiverr, Fiverr. It used to be paying $5 for having people to do stuff. Well, prices have gone up, but this freelancer right here, Nisha, he's the guy that makes these 3D images for me. So we use this image all over for this campaign to make it look more valuable and to draw attention to it. And I'll show you how we do that in a sec. But if you go to Fiverr and you search for Nisha, you'll be able to do this for content for your school. So now SEO, how do we do SEO? So this is the sheet, and you'll see on the bottom, hopefully you can see it, keywords, keyword assignments, and keyword tracking. So here's how you do SEO. Again, we're going to go fast. If you have other questions, follow up, or there's a lot of resources online. But first you have to identify the keywords. So I said, let's just say we did three for each. So we have 9 total. So the second tab you would click over is keyword assignments. What you have to do is you have to assign each of those keywords to a page on your website. So on keyword assignments, you'll see like the web page and then the keyword. And then you have to go in and optimize that web page for that keyword. Very high level. The way to optimize it is you put it in the title tag. You can put it in an H1 tag on the web page. You put it in the meta description, which is part of the web page, which you don't see, but it shows up as Google results. And then there's linking things that you want to do. But you have to optimize each of those pages for that keyword. And then for keyword tracking, what you want to do is for those 9 keywords, I have Chrome here. So you click on the, you go to an incognito window, click on the 3 dots, click on incognito, because if you're logged in, Google will serve you different results because they know who you are versus an anonymous person. So go to an incognito window, type in that keyword, and then manually count where your school shows up. Do that for all. And then, do the date. So we're March 17th. So let's say you're going to start this in April, just say, April 1, 2023, and then put where the ranking is. And then you want to check that every month to see what changes have been made. Here's a tip that you can do right away. Pick the most important keyword for your school. Think about the one keyword that your school needs to show up on the first page of Google. Take that keyword and add that to your home page's title tag. So this is Chrome. If you click the star, you can see what the keyword is. So this was Hudson Montessori School. You'll see private school in Hudson, Ohio. Pipe. So best practice, it's just the up and down line, and then Hudson Montessori School. So go in and add that keyword to your homepage. You can do it now while we're almost done, or you can do it later on, and that will start to help with SEO. Minimal, but it'll start to help. And the other thing to know too is that the website providers that deal with schools a lot, I actually know most of them. They're great people. They don't focus on SEO too much or at all. So it's really going to be incumbent upon you to be a champion for SEO and working on that and doing that. There are tools that will help you with all of this. Just so happens on my website, there's a free SEO audit for schools. Again, I'm eating my own dog food. You have to put in your school website and your email address and your name. But this is instantaneous. You can do this right now. So if you go to SchneiderB.com and then you'll see there's, I think, services are free. You'll see SEO audit. You can put this in and it'll spit it back right away. It'll come back with a report. This was an old design, and it'll tell you things that you can actually do to help with your rankings. I want to talk about content. So we talked about SEO. Number 4 was content, and the difference between a blog and what I think schools are doing. So a lot of schools will say that they have a blog, but what it is just a news feed. It's just the school sharing the good news that's happening at school. That is super important. However, that's not a blog, because a blog is going to be content that's not necessarily about your school. If you want to merge the news stories and the blogs together, that's fine. But just know that a blog is different. It's about to attract prospective families, not necessarily new families. So here are 2 examples from Hudson Montessori School. What are the 5 core components of Montessori education? Read aloud books to engage kindergarten students. So you'll notice these aren't really about the school per se. I mean, it's a Montessori school, so they're talking about the core components. But the other thing is, think about this. They didn't use Anne. One of theirs was Maria, like Maria Montessori. But, Maria, the mom, might type in core components of Montessori education. And we want this blog post to show up. Secondly, read aloud books to engage kindergarten students. So again, we're trying to attract young children there. And those young children have parents who want read aloud books that they can share with their children. So they type them into Google, and we want this to show up. And then the idea, and this is the second thing that schools screw up with blogs, is that type into Google core components of Montessori education. This blog post goes up. These are actual blog posts. And then here's the key. At the end of the blog post, and schools mess this up all the time, there's got to be a call to action. There has to be a conversion point. So here's our critical decision again. We'll use that 3D image. We have the little background there, and then the opportunity to download it. First name and email. Download your copy now. And then the idea is once they download it, we drop them into lead nurturing emails, which I'll talk about in a sec. Just to show you, we also use it in Facebook ads. So we'll use the inquiry magnets in Facebook ads. This is a landing page that we use for the guide. And then I mentioned we drop them into lead nurturing emails so that, and a lead nurturing email, drip email. The idea is that somebody gives you their email, and then you automatically have emails going over to them a course of days. You'll see here that there's an immediate thing, and then there's 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days. We changed. This was actually a compressed timeline because it was toward the end of the year. But if you were, let's say this happened in the fall, you might want that to be a little bit, space that out a little bit. But it allows you to leverage technology to get more done and communicate with people more. The other thing is that these emails, as you can see, these aren't highly stylized newsletter emails. These are designed to be read on a phone. Most people are reading mobile first, particularly busy parents. So do them design them for a phone. And then these are quick emails. And Michelle Laser, who's the director of mission, director of advancement now, it looks like she wrote them herself. These are meant to be like she sat down and wrote them. So don't like do columns and all this other crazy stuff. Pretend that they're actually, written for the persona and sent immediately. By the way, this tool here, this is ConvertKit. Most of the school CRMs or the school admission systems don't do automated emails. And if they do, and they don't do them incredibly well, but I use ConvertKit. So the final thing here is that if you go to SchneiderB.com/ISP, you can download the slide deck and all of the stuff that we talked about. And I have links to a lot of things that we talked about. So hopefully you'll find that helpful. So that's all I have. If we have any questions or comments, I'm happy to chat more.